the principals and the teachers. Oh, now we're recording. I think I should have asked that before I started. I didn't look to see if we were recording. Sorry about that. But again, I wanted to thank you for your commitment to not only our kids, but also to the school district and the relationship with the city. And I want to give you the floor to see if you'd like to say anything. And then we're going to have people gushing over you in a minute too. So be prepared for that. And okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Yes, it's kind of been the farewell tour. Feels a little bit like the Elton John tour, where he just keeps going around and around and around. So, no, I appreciate it. It's been my pleasure, great pleasure, and I've said it, again and again with different groups, is that I feel very honored to have been able to serve the community, serve the students, the parents, the staff, and all, and really appreciate, not only that professional opportunity, but the relations that have been built, and the personal relations, which I know will be lifelong personal relationships with so many individuals, and I love connecting with everyone, and like Christina, and talking about how Allison's doing every time we meet, and all that. So it's been quite a great experience for me, and I can't say enough how grateful I am. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, Mayor.
You're welcome. And I would like to open up the floor. So if anyone wishes to speak, I see a hand going up. Christina, you want to go ahead and chime in, but if you want to speak, please go ahead. You raise your hand, or you can just wait for the next person before you to finish. So Christina, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I just want to thank you, Steve, for all you've done for our great city, and just for really welcoming me when I became city manager, and just for the time that we got to spend together, sort of working on issues, of mutual concern. And I think it's great that you've had some overlap time with Dr. Garcia, who we want to welcome as well. And that just speaks highly to both of you to be able to have that transition time together. I think is huge. So I'll just keep it brief by saying thank you. We're going to miss you. Please do keep in touch. And as I mentioned earlier, that background that you have, go enjoy some of that on behalf of all of us. As you have time, as with your path ahead. So thank you.
Thank you.
John, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Steve, I guess we're kind of at the end of this run, and I got to say thank you. It's a tough thing leading a school district in a community that cares so much, because you're going to hear the loudest voices in the community. Those are caring parents. And so you will never do everything right for everybody. So I know what a tough job it is. I'm sorry, Dr. Carmen, don't mean to scare you, but this community is very passionate. And so for you to initiate so many things that you did, I want to thank you for that. But I also want to, celebrate some of the fun times we had. We got to represent the city of Morgan Hill at our sister city of Meca, Mexico. And that was quite a treat. Got to see everybody with their hair down, and a little sweaty. It was a little warm, but it was just a wonderful time to be able to connect and really work together on, showing what we're like in Morgan Hill, because we do. We even when we travel, we do the best we can to represent our community well and show the warmth that we have here. I also, I can't go without recognizing you for the great work on helping put together those vaccination clinics. You working with Larry, you established the fact that we needed to vaccinate our teachers, and that got the whole ball rolling. Well, that turned into 49 clinics, over 18,000 shots in arms, an incredibly happy community. I've never, I don't think anybody was ever happy to go get a shot before, but there were people that were crying and coming back with gifts saying thank you. That was incredible. And I also have to thank you for then launching me, because I get to go stand in Hollister today in 100-degree weather, because we're having more clinics in Hollister taking care of the disadvantaged there. So you started something really special, and I really do appreciate what you've done. And I know you're not going to be gone, but we just may not be seeing you in all the usual places. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, John. And if I could add, that was a great experience, the project. And it may not be over. I've already connected with Safeway and with Peter Anderson to consider a goodwill trip to Mecca with possible inoculations with vaccines. So stay tuned. There may be a second chapter to this whole thing that would be a influence in a part of the world that might need it. So.
All right. And I'll wait a second to see if anybody else wishes to say anything. I know that the members of the school district probably have already said their goodbyes to you, but again, I just want to really thank you for everything that you've done for our school district, and wish you nothing but the best.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, Shane, go ahead.
I'd like to reiterate my appreciation for our partnership over the years. You've helped and prevented so many major catastrophes from happening at the school because of our partnership and because of your relationships out in the community. You reduced fear by using those relationships to share information and allow the police department to have a balanced approach while providing support and prevention, a true sense of community policing. And wanted to say thank you very much for having that unwavering trust in the police department and always allowing us to readjust and meet those expectations that you have to supporting our students. So I look forward to continuing that great relationship with Dr. Garcia. And I wish you the best in your next journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. And I think you'll always have that memory that I do. Well, we stood together in front of a dozen television cameras and news crews in front of Live Oak after the court ruling on the T-shirt experience. And boy, what a opportunity that was to turn something that could have been a negative mark on Morgan Hill and the district into something extremely positive and influential for then and the future. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Chief.
All right. And with that, I want to now welcome Dr. Carmen Garcia. Welcome to your first city school liaison meeting. They don't always aren't this nice. I'm just kidding.
I love it. I'm just so impressed. I'm taking it all in vicariously, Steve. And John, I absolutely love that we're a community that cares so much and that we're passionate, because I am equally passionate and I equally care so much about our students. And so to Steve, it's been an honor to work with you the past 2.5 weeks. We have a few more weeks to go. And I am also incredibly proud to get the baton from you and to build upon your great success here. And our kids have so much potential, and it's going to take all of us to make sure that each and every student is successful. And so that is my promise to the community. So thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, I'm going to open it up for public comments. These are for items that are not on today's agenda, but I'll be lenient if anybody wants to say anything they want to say to Mr. Bitondo, and wishing him well. I do see there's one person on their phone. If you are on your phone and wish to raise your virtual hand, all you have to do is hit start. So I don't see any hands going up. So let me go ahead and close public comment. I will make a note that we do have one public comment supplement from Mr. Muirhead. It's in your packet, so I'm sure you've all had a chance to read it. So I will close public comment and I will ask for approval of the minutes.
I can so move.
Second.
And I believe, is that Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Okay. We have motion and second. Roll call, please.
Mayor Constantine,
Aye.
Councilmember McKay,
Aye.
President Sullivan,
Aye.
Vice President Horner.
Aye.
Okay, now we'll move on to the city of Morgan Hill, and the first order is budget update.
And I will go ahead and take that item. I
Mr.
wanted
Mayor?
to,
Oh,
If you don't mind, do you want to hit the Pledge of Allegiance?
sure. Why don't you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
All right, please stand. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag
of the
of the
United
United
States of America
States of America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much for that. Okay. Christina, you're up.
okay, great. So I wanted to just provide a little bit of a budget update for this group. I'll keep it pretty brief. So we went to our council in May. So on May 26th, we did our mid-cycle budget review. And so we do a 2-year budget. And so this is for really the upcoming fiscal year that will start on July 1st. And the couple highlights that I wanted to share is related to a destination home grant. And so this is a grant that we've been given over a 3-year period for $450,000. It's going to allow us to fund a position that's going to be a direct liaison to our unhoused residents, the community, and then as well as the county. And so it'll be a homeless or unhoused specialist. So we're really, really excited about that opportunity with Destination Home. Other highlights from the mid-cycle budget review, as far as revenues go, we're seeing property tax and sales tax up. Our transient occupancy tax, our hotel tax is down. We did report in May that our recreation revenues were down, but what we're seeing now with the start of the summer season opening up, recreation is now better than anticipated, which is super exciting as membership is going up. The other key highlight from our meeting was to go through the federal stimulus funds. And we've lost over, and we'll lose over $17 million because of COVID. However, with that said, we've been very thankful that we have received Recovery Act funds, ARPA funds. And so we went to the council and provided recommendations. And so the bottom line is that the funds are going to be used in accordance with the federal stimulus guidelines to replace lost revenue. And so using this funding to provide, as they say, government services to the extension of the reduction in revenues experienced due to the pandemic. And so restoring some of the services that we lost due to COVID and having to reduce our expenditures because of the loss of revenue. The council allocated funding for the traffic calming, allocated costs for hybrid, for allowing us to do hybrid council meetings and get the equipment needed in our conference rooms to allow for hybrid capability, a climate action plan, and enterprise resource program software for efficiency, amongst other items. And then we're going to be going back to the council in August as we're going to be receiving more funds than anticipated as it relates to ARPA. And that concludes my remarks right now on budget.
Great, thank you very much. And now we have the police department update.
Good morning, everyone. So our school resource officer has been making his rounds, meeting with all the high schools. He's attended the South County Youth Task Force meeting, participated in all 3 graduations. There was no issues at those. It was a wonderful event, especially the parade throughout downtown. He's scheduling Run, Hide, Defend training for the schools when they start back up. We're putting together a public relations plan, and we're also will be identifying best practices in the school city SRO MOU as asked by the school board of trustees. As far as crime, there was only 1 arrest for a significant, excuse me. Can you shut my door, please? Can you shut that door? Thanks. There is 1 arrest for a significant injury where a student took a laptop to the head of another, and some stitches needed to happen. Otherwise, there is no other arrests or citations, so that's good. And there was 1 other fight that didn't result in an arrest. As far as the police department, staffing levels are 100%. We're by shift change, which is around July 15th. So that's really exciting for us. We've been working 25% with staffing shortages over the past year. Our hiring practices have allowed us to reach 50% diversity within the police department amongst our sworn personnel. The officers just completed autism training, LGBTQ plus training. We have mental health clinicians coming out with us on Thursdays. We're trying to expand that program through the county and having mental health clinicians come out with us 40 hours a week, 2 of them signed to Morgan Hill for a 2-year pilot. So that's very exciting, and we're being proactive in contacting people that have mental health conditions when they're not in crisis and they're more acceptable to receiving services. And so Corporal Mindy Zen's doing a fabulous job with that. In a moment, I'll introduce to you our youth restorative justice expert, Steve Sheldon, has joined us. I'll introduce him and he'll explain briefly his vision for that program. And then I just wanted to mention that the officers all carry AEDs and Narcans in their cars and respond to medical aids to assist fire, because oftentimes they can get there quicker. And without further ado, I'll introduce Stephen Sheldon. Steve has recently retired after serving 25 years with the San Mateo County Probation Department, where he specialized in working with youth and managing their successful diversion program. Steve will be working with us part-time to develop and implement our own South County Youth Diversion Program in cooperation with other local law enforcement agencies, our district attorney's office, most of you know Adam Flores, and community-based organizations. Steve and his family are South County residents and have lived in Morgan Hill for over 20 years. And without further ado, Steve, would you mind saying a few words?
Yeah, thank you, Chief. As the chief stated, I am specifically going to be working with the South County Juvenile Diversion Program, which is rooted in community involvement and restorative justice principles. I'm really fortunate to be part of this program, as we're going to be able to provide an opportunity for community members and youth who engage in unacceptable behaviors to come together and address the behavior at the local level without deeper involvement in the criminal justice system. And ultimately, the youth are going to be redirected from formal juvenile court processes and be able to participate in a process locally where they learn about the impact of their behavior, what it's had on others, while having a voice regarding accountability and just overall intervention. So again, as was stated, ongoing work's being completed with community partners, the district attorney's office, local law enforcement agencies, who are all collaborating together to establish this program. It's super good work. I'm really excited to be part of this team. I thank you, Chief Pelsgrove, for bringing me on. And yeah, state a little about me. I spent 25 years plus with the local probation department. I managed just about every unit in the juvenile division. I am no expert, but I bring some knowledge with me, and working collaboratively with others. Our mindset is really, let's get something right, not be right. And we really have a great foundation, a great team here. So thank you again for bringing me on board.
Thank you, Steve. And that concludes the police update.
Great, thank you very much. And just for everyone's own edification, if you have questions, we'll just do the city report first, and then we can go ahead and ask questions on any of the 3 items that we were discussing. And the other one will be the COVID update.
Great. I just wanted to briefly mention a couple things. So we're basically waiting for Santa Clara County to come out with their guidance as a result of what the state has put out. And I have been in touch with them as early as this morning, and they have not yet put anything out yet. And so they have the ability to be stricter than what the state is permitting. And so they haven't rolled anything out yet. Some of the things that we're going to be seeing, is, businesses, might not have to have the check marks and different things. And right now, the only difference between, or the most significant difference between the county and the state, is the requirement for employers to take note of vaccination status for their employees, and then to hold that and have evidence of vaccination, or people can decline, or so forth. So that's been the only difference. We're not aware of any other ways in which they're going to sort of differentiate themselves from the state. But they have the ability to do that. They can always be stricter. So we're waiting for that. We're hoping that that's going to come out soon, as well as any additional guidance from Cal OSHA that's going to give us guidance, as an employer, as well as, offering services to our community, whether it be our aquatic center, whether it be our buildings and so forth. So with that, I don't think there's anything else COVID related, unless Chief or Chris or Edith have anything further that they might want to share. And nothing further.
Okay, so now I'll look to anyone, if anyone has any questions. Not seeing any virtual or real hands going up, so I will now open it for public comment. If there's anyone, oh, Mr. McKay.
Yeah, I do it all the time. It's hard to get to that little icon and hit it.
Or you can just raise your real hand. It's a small screen.
Okay, I'll remember that in the future. I just wanted to welcome Officer Sheldon into the role. I think this is a great opportunity. I think that there's a discussion that can be had amongst the board members, all of us here, about how to best utilize his time, his skills, his energy. And so I look forward to the future and how we refine the whole SRO program. I think that's something that has been on top of mind with many. So I'm thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this.
All right. And now I will open it for public comment if there's anybody wishing to address us on the items from the city. Not seeing any hands going up, so I will go ahead and close public comment, and I will turn this over to the school district for their report on return to in-person instruction. Yay! Emma's looking forward to that.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a daily challenge to figure out what the restrictions are or what they're going to be predicted to be for next year and all. But the board has approved the intent for option one, which is to return to school pre-COVID conditions, basically at the fall. And of course, that's all dependent upon what the restrictions are, but predicting that they're going to be lighter and not worse. The hope is that there will be no need for social distancing, and in fact, no need for masks. And so anything more restrictive to that would come from, again, as City Manager Turner said, based on the county's restrictions and or the state. What in kind of weighing the different regulations and guidances, CDC basically left the schools out of their masking determinations. And then we know that today is the day for Cal OSHA to make their advisory recommendations. And I know that Fawn's been watching that carefully because that's the workplace, which you're all paying attention to, I know as well. Their recommendation that's before them, though, is to recommend no masking if everybody's been vaccinated in the workplace. And then, of course, some of the unknowns are if it is up to the businesses, whether or not they choose to require masks is going to be a determiner of how they operate. So, and for our sake, the schools are aside from that, but the district office and the other parts of our business is that is applicable Cal OSHA wise. The schools are aside from that because they are generally more restrictive. If they take off the restrictions on the schools, then we basically default to Cal OSHA and have to make a determination school by school. However, having the default be that we return with no restrictions, and then if the restrictions are applied as we get closer and closer to the opening of school, then the board would make the determination what those restrictions will be by grade level, by school, and by workplace for the employees. Right now, as I think everybody knows, April 12th, everybody returned to school. The pre-COVID conditions also means that it would be in person for all schools, all grade levels. And then there is some consideration for a distance learning option. And in a minute, I could ask Pilar Vasquez Villalba, who I think is still on the call, to talk a little bit about that. But before getting into that, I think it applies to every department. We have, well, one quick announcement. Everybody knows Kirsten Perez, Deputy Superintendent and Chief Financial Officer Kirsten Perez, and now mother of two as of yesterday. Ethan was born, I want to say 6 pounds, 8 ounces or something close to that, 6 pounds, 7 ounces. Lost a little weight yesterday, 6 pounds, 4 ounces. So she's doing great. Baby's doing great. She's anxious to get home. Actually, it's hard, as we've all experienced. She's working while she's in the hospital bed at Good Sam, and it's hard to tell her to stop, but she just keeps responding to emails, so we need to cut her off. But that said, it's a time of closure. So the board just approved the budget, approved our local control accountability plan, the LCAP plan, just Tuesday, and approved every single school's site plan. So we've closed all that. But in addition to that, huge closure, approved the teachers' contract. So we have all contracts approved. Fawn, I'll let you talk with that briefly if you don't mind unmuting and speaking to the contracts and how that all went, including that percentage for the teachers union contract.
Yeah, sure. We are very excited to have concluded negotiations. We have three groups. We have our classified bargaining unit who settled first this year, and that was toward the end of April. And there was 7.5% on the table, and we really appreciate our trustees who really helped set those parameters, and working, of course, with our fiscal department to ensure the sustainability of any increase. As you know, cyclically, that process is done in closed session and behind closed doors, but at the table, the classified ended up distributing it. They put about 2% toward health and welfare benefits, which we felt very grateful because of the impact on COVID. Like many employers, we suspect that those health premiums will increase, but they're not announced until July. So we are very pleased that our classified put some of that toward health and welfare, and then 5.5% on their salary, which is absolutely a great compensation package. Following that, our management staff also, we do a meet and confer. It's not a technical labor union, but it's an association. And we met and conferred, and they graciously accepted the 7.5% completely on the salary table. And then we concluded with our teachers, and often that's the lengthiest set of bargaining because it's a contract that's very specific toward working conditions and hours, and a lot of times class sizes. And so very technical things come up, but we worked through those in a collaborative fashion. It was a 3-year agreement. And those of you who are familiar with agreements know that when the entire agreement is open, it can just take longer because you're really sifting through all those nuances of language. But we really came to some good agreements on language that I think will really improve the working conditions with our employees and with management. And at the end, they also took the 7.5% increase on their salary schedule. So we are very pleased. All 3 of those salary tables are in place for the beginning of our fiscal year, which begins, well, coming up in about 2 weeks.
And I'd like to ask, you could stay unmuted, Fawn, because I want to, the board has helped, well, the board set direction and then helped us really craft and sculpt the LCAP to the needs, especially in the wake of, or not in the wake of, we're in the midst of COVID-19 and the needs of the students, the challenges with not only the academics, but also the mental health of the students. and the workloads at the school site. So Fawn, if you could address, talk a little bit about the enhancement on staffing in different areas.
We had, and I don't know if we've mentioned this in past city school liaison meetings, but we had a very unique memorandum of understanding with our classified during the entire school closure, and that allowed for flexible reassignment. And so we were able to avoid layoffs, and most of our workers were able to come back and perform meaningful work, although it might have been in a completely different capacity than what they had originally been hired. So for example, we had bus drivers, the buses weren't rolling, bus drivers performing some grounds work. And so we were able to get some projects done, and we really appreciate our classified employees in particular for stepping way outside of their job duties, but for the most part did it cheerfully and willingly. And those that weren't as cheerful, I think they still learned a lot. And so we got a lot of feedback at the end of it, how grateful they were to have had a glimpse into the work lives of other employees. And some of them have even since, applied for positions that maybe they would not have if they had not had that exposure. Many others, though, were very grateful to go back when we reopened in April to their assignments that they were originally hired for. So I just want to give a big shout out to all of our classified employees for that tremendous flexibility. What we also realized during the school closure is really the capacity to make such a difference for students in these extraordinary times. And so I'm not looking just for those silver linings, but they're there. And I think for all of us, whether it's personal or professional, there's a lot to be learned from this last year, 15 months time period. And part of that was really adults make a difference in kids' lives. And we know that as a concept, but we got to see it in action where a bus driver reading with students made a difference in reading levels. And so we were almost conducting inadvertently a fuerzas, as we say in Spanish, with some true experiments that really gave us some bright spots. And those bright spots about kind of some intensive reading support with Pilar and the ESD department said, let's look at those bright spots and begin to develop some programming for when our students return full-time in the fall, because we know that they're going to need supports that are different than pre-pandemic. And some of them are just good because with or without the pandemic. So we do have some additional funding, like the city had talked about their additional funding. We have some additional funding. Some of this may be short-term, 1, 2, or 3 years, but Pilar and her team in Ed Services has really designed approximately 34 new positions throughout the district. And I say that's approximate because almost every day I'm getting new requisitions for personnel. And so thank you, Pilar, for keeping HR hopping over the summer. But some of that personnel really is management. Some of it is among our teaching staff, and a lot of it is also with classified. And so primarily those positions are to really support academics and wellness. And so Pilar and her team have envisioned 4 wellness centers, and those wellness centers are brand new. And I'm talking from the ground up. They've identified facilities, they're painting, they're supplying with furniture, and that's kind of on the operational side. And then on the staffing side, which is really where our team comes in, it's to find those licensed clinical social workers and additional counselors and some support staff that can be there to schedule students who need these additional support. So we're very excited to bring these to our campuses. In addition, we are hiring some after school support. Some of those will be teacher supports, and that's for credit recovery for our secondary students. Some of it will be that tutoring support, which intuitively we know it's valuable, but we saw it in real time over this time of sheltering that our students can benefit. And so we've hired some academic tutors that would be the after school supports. That's primarily at our elementary levels. We've also had staffing for during the day support, whether it's additional teaching staff to ease those numbers, especially in K1 and 2, and especially our first graders and second graders that maybe have missed one entire year or longer of being in person. And so it's reading, those are critical reading years. And so putting a lot of time and attention to ease those numbers and to give some additional in-class support, which might be an instructional assistant, or it might be additional teaching staff to ease those numbers at the lower levels. In addition, we've increased the hours of our health clerks. We have health clerks at each of our sites. And what we don't know in the fall is whether our 12 and under students will be vaccinated, right? As we're all watching those clinical trials rolling out, and whether they'll be eligible. What we do suspect, though, is we're still going to need some safety precautions as we monitor the regular flu season as well as any COVID spread among our younger students. So we've increased the hours for our health office to ensure that we have all safety protocols, whatever they may emerge and be by August when we come back. And I think that's in totality, kind of the concept is these academics, really paying close attention to our academics and the data from our students, assessing their needs when they return in August fully to know what is maybe the social, emotional, and wellness needs. But we've got some structures in place, and Pilar, like I said, is keeping me hopping with finding staffing, but it's exciting. It is very exciting to be able to add brand new positions. So let me put in a little shameless plug. If you know anyone who is looking for a job, remember Morgan Hill Unified is Morgan Hill's largest employer, and we have many, many positions available. So send them to HR and we can find something that might meet their skill set or experiences.
And if you thought after graduation, everybody takes off for the summer, Pilar's going to change that opinion for you. She's going to talk a little bit about all our many programs that are happening right now.
It is busy. Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to see you all. Happy summer, if we all get to enjoy one. I'm actually having a lot of fun. First and foremost, super excited to welcome hundreds of kids to either Walsh, Sobrato, or Live Oak and Central campuses. We started summer school this past week. K-8 summer school, credit recovery, summer programming, and what is very near and dear to my heart is the 9th grade summer connection program. It's the very first kind in Morgan Hill Unified School District, and I am giddy over it. It's super exciting to welcome the youngest high school students onto their first high school campus. What I probably found most fascinating, and I did my own little study as I'm walking around and asking students, is that a majority of our students had not returned to campus. And so for many of them, they had not been around their peers in large numbers since March of 2020. And so I will give an example of my son, who is a 9th grader, a rising 9th grader in the program, and he could not hide more into, he would die if I were sharing this with anybody, but I'm going to share it with you, and he's not on. He could not hide more in his sweatshirt, right? Like he was like a turtle, just couldn't get more into his sweatshirt, like hoodie over, like just could not hide more into his sweatshirt. And I then looked around, I'm like, oh my God, there's like a whole bunch of Chris's here, like a whole bunch of them. And so at that point, I started to go around and ask him like, oh, so like, number one, were you forced to be here or did you want to be here? And so it was like a 50-50 split, right? Like my mom made me come, my dad made me come, or no, I wanted to come because I wanted to make sure I'm not lost on day one, or I wanted to meet a few people, or a lot of students from Morgan Hill Charter School of Morgan Hill, which was great. A couple of students from private school. But so many of them, this was their first time coming back. And so that was great. That's very special. And that's why they're there, being able to make connections. Extraordinary to be able to make connections now, right? The whole summer school connection means something very different this year than it did years before when I've done this. So it's great to see them learning about high school, learning about how you manage stress, learning about what a GPA means, learning about how you read your transcript. It's not about reading and writing. It's not about any of that. It's all about how you navigate the high school world, how you get help. What does a counselor do in high school, and how do you get support from an administrator? What kind of sports and activities can you get involved in? How can you start your own club? And so that's really what it's about. There's a lot of team building, a lot of getting to know yourself, getting to know your peers. We did professional development with 15 committed teachers who had no idea what we were doing, but they're like, sign me up. And 4 administrators, Tanya Calabretta, Sarah Guthrie, Lisa Martin, and Veronica Diaz, who said, sign me up, I'm in. I don't know what we're doing, but I'm in. Those are the leaders that are leading our children. So it's important.
So by the numbers, we have 600 K-8 summer school, 250 students in enrichment, 550 in intervention credit recovery, 100 students in academic tutoring. In the ninth grade connection that we're so proud of and Pilar talked about, there are 2 sessions. First session has 110, the second session, which we're still enrolling for, has up to and over 150. And the excitement, Lene was over there yesterday and talked about how incredibly positive and thrilling it is to see the excitement on the kids' faces. The staff is having a great time, and check out the Facebook posting. And that is it for the report.
I was muted. Is there any questions? Not seeing it. Thank you, Steve, for the report. And I will look. Oh, John, both Johns. John Horner will go first.
Thank you. Yeah, I raised my little yellow hand just by way of comment too. We've had 2 school board meetings with the trustees and executive cabinet and superintendent there in person and the public on Zoom, and we intend to continue expanding that circle. I hope to see our friends in City Hall doing something similar soon. But we've done that based on, if you attest to being fully vaccinated and either a elected or a staff member, that's how we've done it so far, and it's been delightful. It's really and I figure we're saving about a half an hour per meeting, just not having to do every vote by roll call. Seriously, if you add up how many items we have on our agenda, just all in favor, it's much quicker. So I hope the city for its meetings, and I hope this meeting that we're all part of, will be able to start gathering together. But also, likewise, I really appreciate all the staff reports and the effort there. Going way back, as trustees, we were very interested in being more flexible with our classified union. Oversimplifying, we said, well, just because the buses aren't running, let's not furlough people. If the state will give us the money, let's find other things for them to do. So that was the kind of the generic vision we talked about, but that was put into place with breadth and depth and brilliance by the staff and by our classified employees. And one of the positives out of this being flexible about assignments, in a government, union, what's your job sort of a world, that's quite uncommon or not the norm, I guess. Not specific to Morgan Hill, but okay, there's no bus to drive right now, so I'll go plant flowers. That was not normal before, but I hope that becomes culturally, part of our new normal, just that notion of flexibility. And it sounds like not only did people enjoy still getting paid and having something to do, but they also found some new roles, or they really appreciated their traditional role. So that's, and distance learning and other aspects, I really hope, and we've all talked about this a lot, it's been painful, it's been costly human wise, it's been costly financially, but we have learned some useful things that we need to continue on. And in that, I'm very excited about the wellness centers. Many of you know I participate in the Legislative Action Committee county-wide, and we have taken as kind of a philosophical talking point on all things, remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if our students are not showing up at school, with their basic needs met, we can't just complain about it and say, well, that must be somebody's job. Maybe Stephen will figure it out. Right? Give it to the police department. That's been one of our society's fallback positions that we all know has not worked. So I'm very excited about the initiative our staff is showing in setting up these wellness centers. And the support the whole board has full-heartedly given for that. We have the worry when this kind of short and midterm CARES money goes away, what then? But we've also kind of broken our typical pattern of saying, we're going to hire the people and do the work. We know we have the money for a few years. We're going to see what works and try and figure it out. And it's kind of a big break with traditional policy as far as hiring new people with money we don't know is going to be there forever, but it's the right thing to do. And I'm really proud of the organization for doing that. And for us as trustees, taking that risk, that's like in the book of things not to do, we're doing one of those things you're not supposed to do, but it makes sense. So we're doing it. And I really appreciate that. And then one other thing we haven't talked a lot about yet, I'd just like to mention, as an organization, we passed resolutions of support recently, both for the LGBTQIA community, as well as standing against anti-Semitism. And in those resolutions also included specific calls to action for us as an organization. Attitudes start in the youth, and we're the ones alongside of parents and guardians, really responsible for setting those attitudes amongst our youth. And again, not specific to Morgan Hill, but to education in general, we know we can do better on that. There's a huge conversation about ethnic studies going on statewide, and what does that mean? But really institutionalizing and internalizing for all the adults involved these values of inclusiveness and treating each other the right way is a big deal. And I'm proud of our organization for moving forward and knowing we have a lot of work to do. So, and I'm also really glad that last year the state's coffers were not hit the way the city's coffers were. And that's just really because of the peculiarities of California funding and the peculiarity of having a booming stock market during an economic catastrophe, which I'm not quite sure how the Federal Reserve pulled off that trick. It's all smoke and mirrors, but that's really why we have the money to do some of these things. And it's created quite a different situation in the near term for schools than it has for cities and counties. But hopefully with the economy roaring back and sales tax coming back, and I think hotel rooms are going to fill as quickly as they're allowed. Hopefully everyone will be on a get well plan there. But just a few additions. Sorry for going on so long, but there's been a lot going on. Thank you.
Thank you, John. John McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And John, thank you for those comments. I have a question that might be too broad for this setting. So if you need to reach out to me individually, that's fine. But my question is the true progress of our students made during the last school year. There was distance learning. I've heard it was a little bit clunky, maybe not as effective as in person. So as a community, the education community really started to analyze and study just how much progress has been made and what adjustments are you going to make with next year's curriculum to either adjust for that, acknowledge it and adjust it. I mean, is there, I can't be the only one thinking about this. I just thought I'd ask you where you're going with that.
I could start and then I'd ask Pilar to jump in too. It is a broad question, and certainly the analytics of it, come out with broad interpretation, but also specific interpretation based on subgroups. In general, students did very well, but when you break it down to which students did well and which ones suffered, then that's where the message is in the story. So we were pleasantly surprised overall that in general, the population did well according to our analytics, but of course, not all the analytics are the same for the condition. So Pilar, I'll let you step in and give what you can. I know that we're still looking at a lot of it, but we had some reports that went to the board on initial benchmarks and such.
Yeah, no, that's a great question that you asked, John, and we are really going to begin diving more into that data. I could tell you that based on all the things that was just mentioned on the different kinds of supports that we're providing, we anticipate that we are going to see a lot of need related to literacy and math across the board, right? Like this is going to be just across the board. There are definitely populations of our students who were impacted more than other students. And we know that. I mean, those are just patterns across the board. Like we could only anticipate that has gotten greater during this pandemic with students that were struggling with even just having the support at home, students who weren't able to come back to campus. So as a result of that, a lot of the additional staffing that we've hired is to actually dive into that data, do some cycle of inquiries, and do some targeted supports. I think what we need to do is really extract the standards and really start to do some targeted instruction. We need to be careful that we also don't create different kinds of tracking. So how we do it is going to be key, so that we don't then start to create these micro divisions of students that are in these different levels. Therefore, now we've created what we've really tried to move away from. So we're going to be providing the board data more frequently, because we're going to be looking at it more frequently, and targeting our approaches differently, because we know we can't do what we've been doing. We have to really re-image and reimagine school and how we teach and learn. So very loaded, very broad, but stay tuned. I hope that helps. Stay tuned.
Okay, I've been impressed with my recent exposure to the level of individual student assistance. Nothing like when I went to school, where you were handed a book and said, you know, we're going to read this, and at the end of the year, you're going to be done with it, and you're going to know that. Now it's very individual. I can just see this is taking this to a whole new level. Now, are they thinking about, is there a discussion about extending the school year? Those kind of things to help make up some of this ground, or is it really going to be focused on individual attention?
Yeah, and Steve could talk a little bit to that. There hasn't been conversation about extending the school year. What we're trying to do is extend the day in different ways. You only given this many, I mean, and then in FON could talk contractually. I mean, I never get involved in that stuff, right? Like, I'm like, those are barriers to me. I don't like barriers, right? So I need to think about, I only have X amount of hours during the day. There's so much that could be taught during the day. I need to be very strategic on how I design what I can do outside of that school day. And so that's where I become an arranger, and I start to think, how can I maximize? How can I identify my talent who is willing, my coalition of the willing, and everybody knows that's my key term, the coalition. How can I work with my coalition of the willing, who is willing to be creative with me, think outside of the box, and we do a tiered approach of how we support our students with the greatest need, and really then partner with the parents. Parents are key in this, and how we can help support your students. And that has to, we can't do that during the day. We can't take students out of their classes during the day to do what we need to do, because they need to be in their classes. If not, we're perpetuating what we're trying to improve. And so it has to happen outside the school day. So we're trying to design different extended day models that aren't homework club, that aren't punitive, that aren't labeling students, that are an opportunity to celebrate the student, to continue to enhance the student's skill set, while not approaching it through a deficit lens. There's nothing wrong with our children. There's something wrong with the system. And so we need to make the system better for our children. And so that's where we step in and try to get the best minds together to say, how can we be better? Is this our best for our kids? Are we doing our best? And so the coalition of the willing is pretty amazing.
Thank you for that. I could get real granular, but I won't. I just want to say thank you, because it sounds like you got a lot of work ahead of you, and I'm just really glad that you guys are doing that work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor. Mr. Mayor, can I?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I just wanted to check into, because Dr. Garcia, I saw her raise her hand. I don't know if she wanted to chime in. I want to give her a moment before I spoke, but.
Yeah, I saw Emma peek through,
Yeah.
so I was saying hi to Emma.
Oh, okay.
But if I could just reinforce what Pilar and Steve said, it's the meet students at their level of need, at their very targeted point of need. And Pilar said, she used the word data. Data are our friends, and so we are going to get really good about expecting what we inspect. And that includes common formative assessments. We will work with our teachers on the use of assessment so that we know exactly what students need and we can reinforce that via instruction. Pilar mentioned the tiered approach. We have to, as a system, be a solid tier 1. Our tier 1 needs to be solid in order for us to get into the granular, as you mentioned, John, focus on the tier 2 and tier 3 interventions, because often we use, and I'm not talking about Morgan Hill, but just in education in general, often we use the after school as a way to fix what happened during the day. We cannot, after school needs to be incredibly targeted. There is no replacement for what happens inside the school, and that is where our focus needs to be. And so once we strengthen that, then we're better able to support the student needs. And I concur with Pilar. There is absolutely nothing wrong with our students. All of our students are brilliant, and it is up to us as an organization to be nimble and to turn on a dime if need be. And so I look forward to the work ahead. It's going to be a lot of work, but it will take all of us in order for us to achieve that. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. And thank you, Councilmember McKay, for your questions. Those were really salient questions. And I think as trustees, we definitely look forward, and as a community, we look forward to hearing more as we progress through the summer and into the start of the new school year. And I just want to say, although we haven't extended this past school year, I am, as a trustee, just thrilled with the amount of services and supports that we're providing this summer. The quantity of students who are able to take advantage of some of the programs that we have this summer. I mean, we haven't had a program this large, and I don't know if ever. And I'm super, super excited for the ninth grade summer connection, or the ninth grade connection program that Assistant Superintendent Vasquez Villalba has initiated. I came from a district as a student where there were those programs for ninth graders. And so for her to launch this in our own district, I think is fantastic. And I think it provides a really great foundation for our incoming ninth graders to set them up better and kind of get them a little bit further ahead as they start their high school journey. So I think the numbers that I'm seeing in terms of registration, they look great, and it's exciting for year 1. And I can only imagine how much larger it will be by the time we get to years 2 and 3 and beyond. And I just also want to acknowledge the work of that our HR department is doing in terms of trying to staff, provide these extra staff supports for our students, especially when it comes to mental health and our social emotional supports, because as a board, we do recognize coming fall that there will be a definite increased demand for those types of services for these kids who are coming back to campuses after not having stepped foot in over a year and a half, and how daunting that may be when they do come back. And so I'm really excited for the programs that we have in place now to start building that transition, and then the supports we're going to have for kids when they do touch those campuses again in the fall. And so really appreciate our district staff for all they're doing right now to get us there. So just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you. And I see Mr. Horner's hand up again.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, on summer school too, as a policy matter, which wasn't mentioned, we, as a district, made the decision to open summer school by request and not because you meet this criteria. That traditionally summer school basically, to put it in lay terms, you had to have a really bad educational problem to qualify and get invited. I remember when I was a kid, it was almost a punishment, like you have to go to summer school. And so, our district really flipped the script on that this summer. And I hope that's something we're able to do in the future, of saying, if you would benefit, here are the programs, please come. And I think that's part of, and unlike the old rock and roll song, school's out for summer, school's in for summer, it should be, somebody needs to do a singing parody of that, because I know for many of our families, they're very excited to be able to come on campus, even if it's only for a few weeks or to get some extra help. So, and that's one of the responses to your broad question, Member McKay, but I also fully agree that in principle, we don't, need more days and more time. We need to be more effective with the days and time our staff and students have together. And, there's exceptions to that and after school programs and whatnot, but I certainly don't foresee, going to, okay, we're going to add 3 weeks to the school year to make up or something like that, as sometimes has been discussed in the broader public. I don't see that happening Way back when our governor did a news conference where he suggested that. I think it was about 8 months ago. I can't even remember, but managing by news conference actually doesn't work out too well either. But thank you all for the dialogue.
Great, thank you. I do have one question. Can anyone articulate the policy of that if a student or a teacher or staff member tests positive with COVID in any of the school districts or in any of the school sites, what the procedure is?
I will call on a member of the health safety team at the district, Fawn Myers.
As we really, since the beginning, I would say maybe since last April, have worked closely with the County Public Health Department and Santa Clara County Office of Education. And so there are very scripted protocols, and we have all of our notification letters in place. We have 2 COVID designees for our district. One resides right here in Human Resources, and the other is one of our school nurses. And she has really become kind of the expert at defining close contacts, et cetera. So as soon as we hear that any employee has either been exposed, firsthand exposure, or has any symptoms, we begin those protocols. And so we are very poised and ready. We've had practice now for over a year of handling these cases. So they're not easy to handle, but they have become easier to manage in terms of just what our notifications are, and who we notify, who quarantines, et cetera. So we do have a classroom protocol, Mayor, if that's your question, for when we return in person. We complied with the county self-certification process for all of our employees. We had a really great response rate. And as you know, because the city is required to do this for their employees as well, is that every 2 weeks you have to go back and ask, right? So self-certification, are you vaccinated? And there are many different options. At very first pass, we had 72% that acknowledged they're fully vaccinated. And of course, there were smaller percentages that said, I've had my first, but not yet my second, or I have an appointment to get my first. And so we expect that that number for our overall employees will probably hit 80 or more % when we come back. And that's important. As I stated earlier, it's that 12 and under group that we don't yet know whether they'll even be eligible. We're all hopeful, but we, as others have talked about, we've had the vaccination clinics, and a really great number of the 12-plus-year-olds have come through to get their vaccines. So it's not a requirement yet to be vaccinated to return to school, but of course it's going to help. The more adults on campus that are vaccinated, the more students that are vaccinated, to control those exposures and those numbers. But we'll continue with the same protocols we had, which is anybody who's exhibiting a symptom goes home and they don't return until they've had a negative test. We are offering testing on each of our sites every 2 weeks or as needed for both students and adults. So those are the protocols in place for coming into the fall. Would be really testing for symptoms prior. If there are symptoms, return to go home and not return until they're either symptom-free or a negative COVID test.
Great, thank you very much.
Mhm.
All right, I'll open this up to a public comment now. I don't see any hands going up, so I will go ahead and close public comment and move on to any other reports. Is there any of my colleagues or anybody on staff wishing to give another report or an update? Don't see any hands going up. Let me go to my gallery screen to make sure I'm not getting any hands popping up. Okay, and then now any future topics for future meetings? Not seeing any hands going up. Okay, and then before I adjourn, our next meeting will be August 20th. Uh-oh. And real quick, okay, Kirsten, say
Hi, bye.
hi, bye. This is, Wendy has her hand up. Go ahead, Wendy.
I just wanted to be able to make a comment before we close. So if there's any other business you want to conduct, then please.
Well, you want to say anything about your school? You're going to be, which school are you going to?
El Toro.
El Toro. This is our future El Toro student in August, so she's super excited, right?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
I also wonder when I'm going to be
She's being shy right now. I don't get it. But anyway, so thank you very much. Wendy, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I did. earlier when you guys were getting to acknowledge Steve, you made a comment that the board already had its opportunity to recognize him, which we did. We took some time at the conclusion of our last board meeting on Tuesday night to have individual trustees be able to recognize Steve. And so I understand, I think from what I can tell from my calendar, this is the last formal public meeting that we'll have with Steve, and we've, nearing the end of our business of this meeting. So I won't go over everything that everybody else said from our board meeting, but definitely many trustees were able to recognize the many accomplishments that he's had throughout his career here in Morgan Hill Unified, and individuals certainly touched on things here today, which were also echoed. And so as we conclude, just wanted to take this opportunity again to acknowledge and thank Steve for his many years of service to Morgan Hill Unified School District in his initial capacity as our Assistant Superintendent of HR, and then most importantly as our superintendent. And then just to thank him again for his dedication to the students, staff, and the families of our district. So I just wanted to take that opportunity before we close today.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And with that, meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.
Have a great day,
Everyone, have a
everyone.
wonderful day.
It's a good thing she can't have your job because she's not old enough yet, Rich.
I know.
You got 18 or 21 to be mayor. You got some competition.
I think 18? No.